Welcome all of you to the International Commentary channel. In today's video I sent you about the weekly press conference of Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova. Not to keep you waiting. Soon, we will come to part 2 where international reporters will ask questions to the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs about what is happening hottest in the world. The reporter's first question. The question is whether Russia can play a mediating role in the settlement of problems between Palestine and Israel. Without the two-state formula, what is meant and what must be done to ensure the success of this formula in alliance with the countries of the Russian Federation always supports the long-term and comprehensive settlement of the conflict between the Arab bloc and Israel in accordance with the internationally recognized legal framework on central issues, which also includes the two-state principle. This formula deals with aspects of the Palestinian crisis and provides for the establishment of an independent Palestinian state within the 1967 borders with the capital on the other side, East Jerusalem, where there will be peaceful and secure coexistence with Israel. We believe that this vision can be fully realized within the framework of direct negotiations between Palestinians and Palestinians. Israel's status quo of development in the conflict zone in recent years, no matter how much the United States wanted to freeze the area, has proven its absolute impossibility and danger to us today. Once again witness the consequences of the absence of a peace process and the indifference of the West towards Palestinian issues. This is the result of the course that has been rolling out in Washington for many years. Russia intends to continue to providing comprehensive support to the conflicting parties to de-escalate the confrontation so that a ceasefire can be established. We are in close contact with the leading actors in the region who have an irreplaceable role in stabilizing the situation and creating conditions for establishing direct dialogue between Palestinians and Israelis, as evidenced by the fact that yesterday these ideas were discussed at the meeting between foreign ministers Sergei Lavrov and Secretary General of the Arab delegation Abul Gait. Asked reporters next question. In the context of the current conflict, do you expect the financial and military interests of the West to gradually shift from Ukraine to Israel? I will answer this another way. Do you think that the fact that the United States has just postponed the issue of licensing new weapon supplies to the Kyiv regime for literally the past month might have something to do with the situation in the Middle East? Let's go back to the first question that no one in the White House has ever answered, which is how throughout the year preparing for the campaign in the Middle East did the U.S. intelligence agencies, also like the defense ministries in many places in the region, did not warn their closest ally, Israel, somehow less than a month before all the events that were happening in the Middle East? Supplies to the regime have been temporarily suspended. The reason given is due to budget problems in the United States. You see, it's an interesting coincidence. I think it's worth mentioning. Let's think about this first, and then ask all the questions to the White House, and then talk about the future. The next question from reporters is that you always think that the problems in the middle map surrounding the conflict between Israel and Palestine have being prevented by a collective West. So what is the West's purpose in preventing this work? It's a very good question if you remember that reason is very far-fetched, starting from a special military campaign in Ukraine. But right now, the situation is still developing according to the mentality of those who do not see a political and diplomatic solution in the region. Let me remind you that the United States has unilaterally stopped to resolve this conflict, but they did not give any real reason behind it. I want to emphasize once again that for Washington, the method and path of implementing international legal documents stipulating specific steps to stabilize the situation in the region makes no sense at all. They have already proven this to us with the Minsk agreements, and now, it turns out, they are starting to handle it in exactly the same way with all the international legal documents that are supposed to ensure lasting peace in the Middle East. I would like to ask a further question, whether they handle resolutions on the Middle East in the same way as they do. Did you do with the Minsk agreement? When you voted for or participated in this work, did you initially know that they would not do it and that this was completely unnecessary for them? This is a real question. Interesting. The next question from reporters is that recently Mrs. von der Leyen at the Atlantic Council meeting blamed Russia for the use of nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What action has the Ministry of Foreign Affairs taken? No. And what was the result of it? Did they apologize or deny it? As you remember, we immediately commented on this and produced some documents refuting the most historical nonsense, which she said. Secondly, they never apologize for anything, because there are two reasons. Sometimes even they themselves don't understand what they are saying, and often do it maliciously. Everything is the same here. Let's I remind you that the United States is the only country and the first to use nuclear weapons. Does Mrs. von Leyer know about this? I think she knows. Is she doing this on purpose? I'm sure. Is so because all the other memorial ceremonies held in Japan dedicated to this tragedy always had some common elements. They never mentioned that the United States was the one who used the weapon. The latest development in this field is that the Japanese side keeps saying that during those tragic days a natural bomb could fall from the sky. Obviously, this is their own logic, or they could also be carried by a bridge, or the symbol of an irradiated girl named Sasaki has become so familiar that people have made dozens of origami-style symbols in the hope that she will recover. Is a monstrous story a caricature that Western politicians are turning into a tragedy? The next question from reporters is, ma'am, recently the US government has updated its regulatory regulations. Exports in the form of temporary regulations to put 31 Chinese companies on the list of unverified companies and strengthen control over semiconductor exports to China. Will the technology war instigated by the US achieve its goals? Whether or not to hinder China's technological development, and what impact its export controls will have on the US? I don't think it will achieve anything at all. Developing like all the countries that the US hates to the core. Their progress in the field of science and technology and the humanitarian field. Let's see, Cuba has been punished for decades. They are still developing, survive, and achieve achievements that many Western countries have never dreamed of. Let's continue to look at the oppression that some other countries are under, sanctions that can do almost nothing to them. Yes, it has created difficulties, but they are still developing and moving forward with China too. We see everything that the West planned to throw back at China in its development has not been successful. How it brings even more dynamism to Beijing. The growing instability in trade and investment relations between the world's two largest economies, US and China, due to Washington's fault, is increasingly negatively impacting the global outlook as well as the US economic region itself. Russia and China oppose the illegal unilateral sanctions of Washington and their satellites. We see them as symbols, expression of impotent anger at the new democratic multipolar world order that is emerging. Moscow and Beijing are interested in developing international economic and trade relations built on basis of mutual benefit and fair competition. We condemn attempts to achieve one's own economic prosperity at the expense of others, because this is colonialism. We believe that a large, diverse economy like China can cope with any unilateral restrictions. The long-standing work of the Chinese authorities clearly shows that the ability to overcome any restrictions created by the West is making inroads and trying to reverse the course of history. Neither Russia nor China will allow this to happen. Beijing's and Moscow's actions are both trying to reduce foreign dependence and technology as representatives of the collective West has clearly demonstrated to everyone that they can be used at any time as a weapon and means to stop rapidly growing competitors. According to reporters, in Ankara, the Russian and Turkish foreign ministries jointly issued a statement on the need to reform the World Trade Organization (WTO), proposing to abandon unilateral trade restrictions. And how realistic is protectionism in your opinion under current conditions, and are countries willing to support this initiative? We note that the West's unconstructive approach causes significant conflicts between World Trade Organization members and increases the risk of fragmentation of the multilateral trading system, as we have repeatedly noted that illegal sanctions have an adverse impact on the supply chain, global supply, national trade, and central efforts to achieve sustainable development. However, the WTO continues to demonstrate its ability to survive even in difficult and uncertain conditions. This geopolitically stable organization was conceived as a universal platform to develop uniform international trade rules for all and monitor compliance with them while being recognized by most member countries. Aware of the need to reform the WTO to better adapt to modern economic realities and improve the effectiveness of responding to new challenges and threats, we, on our part, pay special attention to restore the functioning of the appellate body and ensure the normal functioning of the entire dispute resolution system for the purpose of appealing against illegal trade restrictions, all of which will be given priority at the 13th WTO Ministerial Conference to be held early next year. When contacting us, representatives of the majority countries of the world confirm their desire to contribute constructively to the implementation of effective The next question from the reporters was, how do you assess the latest investigation into the terrorist attack and the Nord Stream gas pipeline? The situation is similar to what is happening now. Out in the map, the top NATO countries are clueless about what is happening. There is nothing no one is sharing any important information. And why is that so? Maybe they have calculations and plans. Or maybe there is something to hide for more than a year. The governments of Germany, Denmark, and Sweden have not provided the international community with any clear information about the preliminary results of national investigations into the terrorist attack and the Nord Stream gas pipeline, in the context of which all kinds of false hypotheses are being spread in the media. To deflect suspicion from the real perpetrators, Russia is interested in ensuring that the real perpetrators of the terrorist attack and critical energy infrastructure caused enormous economic and environmental consequences. The school does not escape responsibility this year on our initiative for meetings of the United Nations Security Council have been convened, including last month and this month. I assure you that this topic will not leave the agenda. Russia will regularly raise these issues at meetings, especially in the Security Council. The purpose of the document is to send a clear signal of the unity of the Council. In condemning this brutal act, the duo will try their best to interfere in the development of such a document. We remember that it was the brother who blocked all attempts to bring up this topic. Come out. Discussion at the Security Council, especially to somehow bring the discussion to a practical level. Finally, Russia proposed an investigation under the auspices of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. Practical knowledge, ask questions, and invite experts. We remember how fiercely the Anglo-Saxons stopped all this. No matter what, we will continue. We hope that our colleagues, our Western industry, will at least show some respect for international law, because they are a member of the United Nations Security Council and wish to work seriously on the project we set out to do. Yes, above are the main points in the press conference of the Russian Foreign Ministry that I want to send to you. Is there a truth that I have noticed in recent days after the events that happened in Palestine and Gaza in the United States? Once, when it comes to peaceful solutions, the only thing they mention is how to provide the fastest aid and the most weapons to Israel under the pretense of being able to destroy the terrorist organization Hamas as quickly as possible by sacrificing money, giving birth to millions of Palestinian citizens in Gaza. League, and all of you, what do you think about this issue? Please comment below, and for now, goodbye, and see you in the videos after.